Hi guys, Ryu here with another tweet for Blender, and today let's talk about rendering and how to make this thing awesome. Now, in this tweet I'm not gonna actually show you how to set up lights or how you post-process your renders, but I want to talk to you about most important things when you're considering rendering and why it is important, right? Now, render is just an image. Like any other image, is like a painting or photography. It's all about lighting, shadows, shapes, composition, framing, and so on. Now, with what authority I'm gonna tell you this? I got 2 decades of experience as an artist. I've been working 7 years as a professional photographer, portrait photographer in Tokyo. I was teaching Photoshop for years, photography for years. I was doing all kinds of stuff, pro retouching, compositing. So, you know, I spent thousands of hours doing that thing. And rendering for me and processing renders is just exactly the same thing. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. Let me give you a few tips that you might find useful. First of all, you need to understand how people look at an image. Now, it doesn't matter if you're Chinese, American, Taiwanese, Bengalis, whatever the fuck is, right? You're gonna look from left to right, okay? Your eyes gonna jump into an image from left to right. It means you need to grab their attention from the point of entry to the point of exit and keep them in the image as long as possible. Now, how do you keep them in the image? Now, that is a trick. So, we're gonna look for human figures. We're gonna look for points of contrast. We're gonna look for points of brightness. So from bright to dark, from contrasty to less contrasty, from sharp to blurry, from colorful to not colorful, from warm colors to cold colors. So the idea here is to keep people in the image as long as possible, to make them circulate in the image. Now, how does it work? Okay. It's not easy thing to explain, by the way. Well, let's grab this image as an example. So my eye is gonna go from the left, right? Which means this element here. Okay, that's fine. So then what? Then they're gonna go to the next bright spot, which is probably here or here, right? So they're gonna jump here, 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 and here. And then probably here because there's a contrast difference and no lights. And they're gonna start reverting back. So you're gonna go either this way or this way. More likely you're gonna go this way and then cycle back in here. So it's all about how you place the elements in your picture. You think these gaps here, they're accidental. So the gaps between the ship and the cargo, the guy and the ramp, the guy and the cargo and the mech, the cargo and the ship at the end of the frame. No, this one is also purposeful. It's the end of the frame. You're supposed to bounce back. Why do you think the text is in here on the bottom, not on the top? Because on the top is just, it would clutter the image. This space here is mostly irrelevant. These are the details that fill the frame, but they do not carry the frame, right? So if you think about image as a scale, in terms of scale, you need to scale and weight all the elements in the picture. So shadows and lights, shapes, etc. So for example, if I zoom out this image, right? That's how very often you can determine if the composition is good or not, when you have a balance of shadows and highlights in the image that's really far zoomed out. Then you have, for example, lighting, like here, okay? Do you think that these red lights here, the warm lights, right? The position is accidental? No, it isn't. First of all, the whole bike, the main line is curvy, which means it sort of softens it up, right? But the lights are on diagonal lines. Also, they spread, so even if you look in the middle of the image, you can see them with the corner of your eye, so you get pulled away. Then, for example, in this one, right, you got brightness of this. Let me grab a different brush here. Different layer. You got brightness of these spokes and these antennas in the back, right, to balance the brightness of this 2 lights at the front.
So even though you get from here, you sort of hover in here, and this is the most important part of the bike, right? Because you got this the driver, you got the drone, the engine, etc. But you're gonna get pulled back in here because of this element and this element and this element. They're gonna pull you back in. You got some contrast interest in here too. So it's important to understand how to control this with your editing. And if I show you the original image, yeah, it's just flat. Not this one, this one. It's flat. And it's not a good example. When I render this image with a basic default glass IOR, I got this nasty reflections. I couldn't get rid of it because my angle of light was such that it reflected the light. So I re-rendered the same image with different IOR values and the glare was gone. I simply removed the glare from the window just for the purpose of compositing because I knew it's gonna mess up my image. Then the text, you know, this one and the signature, right? Where is the signature? So this text is not as bright as these elements, but it's gonna be contrasty enough to pull your eyes here and sort of jump back down, right? So it fills the frame, but it doesn't clutter it. Now this one here, the signature, right, is important too. If there's nothing in here, this space would be irrelevant. And because this bike is angled in a way, I couldn't fill the frame with it without actually losing any details. Right? Because I could actually zoom in, but then I would lose the whole shape of the bike, which I wanted to keep. So this is the only place I could place anything like a signature, would be just perfect for it. Okay, here wouldn't fit because you clutter the image and you know, sort of fight for the position with and the attention with this zone text, right? So it's really just it's literally designing the render and the final image. You design it, okay? You balance all the elements. Another thing is that you need to think differently about what you are actually rendering. Don't think about it as a mech. Don't think about it as a ship. Think about it as a cluster of shadows and highlights, and you need to balance them. Of course, the purpose of the object that you're rendering is important. If it's a mech, you're not gonna put it in a pink tutu and ask it to dance, do you? But the thing is that the object itself will reflect light, and these reflections are gonna create composition, because composition is created with light and shadows. Because without light you see black, just black canvas, that's it, you see nothing. That brings us to the subject of lighting. So you have two types of lighting, okay? Well, generally. So let me show you. One is a harsh light like this. So you get the sun, right? It's really contrast the image, really, you know, rough, yeah? And even though the image is mellow, you got the sharp light with the contrast basically in the image between the light and the message. But in this, for example, case, the light is super mellow, right? It's just almost non-existent shadows and highlights. It's just very close in values, in tonal values to one another. So it's a low contrast image. Now you want something mellow with preferably flat lighting, because you can do anything you want with it, right? For example, this bot, right? It's gray. There's not a single color of a material color, right? On this bot, it's all gray. The only color that's been cast on it is been cast by the HDRI. There's only single light in this image, right? In photography, what we do is we use gray screens. We can create any type of background with gray screens. They can turn black, white, or colorful. If you, for example, move the lights away from the background, the falloff will take care of itself. I mean, of the brightness of the background is gonna go pure black. So, for example, if you have, let's say, I'm standing here, the model is here, and the background is here, and the light is really close, there's no way that this light can spill on the background, because I cannot bump the light really high because I'm gonna overexpose the face, right, or whatever I'm shooting. So light needs to be, you know, mellow enough, right? However, the light falloff will take care of it. So basically the light will dissipate, and will not reach the background, which means it's gonna turn completely black,
Reversely, if you're gonna blast the light on the background, it's gonna be white. If you use a color light, it's gonna be colorful. And that's what happens here. It's a gray surface being turned into, you know, a really nice warm colors. But it's just a gray color. There's no color on this image, right? I mean on this material. So it's really crucial to know how light behaves and how it will react with your surfaces. How will it, you know, transport the color information, light information, reflectivity, etc., right? So then you adjust your camera angle accordingly. See, the camera is angled here in a way and towards the light that the light reflects from this surface back to the camera at the angle that makes it shiny, right? We can talk about shapes too. You have this massive, static, colossal object that is heavy. We can recognize it subconsciously that it's metal, it's massive, it must be heavy. But you got those diagonal dynamic lines here, you see? This one, or triangles like here, right? Or, you know, this one. These are all triangles, right? So you got triangle between the text, and text is packed in here because it's an ad. It's supposed to be packed. But then again, for example, think about it. Your eyes go from here, right? This is darker than this one. So your eyes gonna come here, yeah, but they're gonna bounce back here to the point of largest contrast, which is actually here. And speaking of this point here, this bit, do not push your light to pure blacks and pure whites. You think this is pure black? This is not pure black. This is close to it, but not pure. Pure black would be, you know, 0. It's not. It's, you know, it's brightness at 11. So it's essential not to push it too far, because if you do push it too far, you will start losing details. So for example, if you wanted to, if I went back here, right, and push this image in, let me grab a camera raw really quick. If I went here and pushed this too far, for example, like here, all the areas here with pure white have no texture information. It's just washed out. And the same thing goes the other way. There's no info in here, it's just pure black. So if you push your image too far, you will lose all that info. You see in my histogram here, right? Left is dark, right is bright. And if I push it too far, the triangle lights up because it starts clipping. So you can see when you're actually losing information in your image. And you can see by those highlights, yeah, purplish highlights. So that's why the image here is flat. Now the trick to editing photos, right, or any renders is actually to do it gradually. If I introduce a, you know, global contrast in here, so I simply make black darker and white brighter, yeah, I'll have contrast, but it looks like dog shit. And the reason is that because it's global. Let's look at it if we were doing it, you know, slowly and gradually. So for example, I would just bump my blues. So I'll remove yellows from the shadows and switch it to color so it will not affect my brightness. Then I'll go to blend if and remove all this data, blue data, from highlights. And then I'll grab another curve, right? And I'll switch it to luminosity. So if I adjust contrast, it will not increase my saturation. And then, you know, increase bright spots and sort of drop the darker spots to increase like a local contrast on different areas, right? So I can contrast them in a different way depending on what I'm actually attacking or targeting, right? So now, if I grab this and I'm going to drop the fill a little bit, just a little bit on it, and let's put it in a group, right? So you see this one is quite mellow. It's contrasty, but it's mellow. Now if I compare it with this one,
You see how vulgar this looks like? It's just vulgar. It's like a cheap. It looks cheap. So with everything in life, you need to just put some time into it and care and love, because otherwise it's gonna look like rubbish. So it's important to know how to edit your images too, how to render them first. So see, when I take an image, right, doesn't matter if it's a render or a picture, I do it with post-processing in mind. So when I take a picture, I take it with a purpose. So for example, if I take a portrait of someone and I wanna edit it, I want it to composite it, right? I'll get the right angle, the right lighting, and the right colors that I need to work with it later in Photoshop. So I'll think about my background, about my theme, about my story and all that, and take it with, with all these things in mind, not just willy-nilly. So when you create something really cool in 3D, make sure that the renders are good too. Because there's nothing worse than just having a really good work being fucked by really bad renders. Because that is what's going on in your portfolio. And people will judge you based on what they see, not what you can do. Because that's how brains work, right? People are very visual, and the attention span and first impressions are... The attention span recently, especially in recent years, is very short. And people judge things by the way they look very often. And it's not even about looking into the image and thinking, oh wow, the render is not too good, but this guy has a skill. No, game dev or whoever is looking for an artist, they will look at your stuff, they will think, okay, this guy knows how to model, but he doesn't really give a shit about renders, which means he's not really thorough about what he's doing. He's not serious, because if he was serious, he would learn that, right? He would put additional effort into learning these skills, because that's all about selling his art. And he has a skill, but he's just neglecting the final step. So why they would hire you? Why they would offer you a job or a project if they would think like, okay, so he's gonna be working on this project for 3 months and then gonna tell him to piss off because he's tired. See what I mean? That's what kind of image it would create in my mind if I was looking at other people's work. If I see a very well refined image, right, then I'm like really impressed. Because I know that this is just an artist who cares about every single step in his creative process. And that is perfection, right? So I would suggest that the good way to learn rendering would be to learn about how light behaves, right? How composition works. What is the golden ratio? What is the rule of thirds? All the basics. And then you start learning how to break rules, because good composition doesn't come from the rules. It comes from breaking the rules. Knowing how to break the rules. That's where the most important stuff lies. But you can't break the rules without actually knowing what you're breaking, right? So first you need to learn the damn thing before you're gonna start playing with it. Look up some tuts maybe on photography, on photographing products, cars, doesn't matter, whatever you do, you need to think like, what do I need this render for? If my render is a concept art, I need to go out there and find the best concept artist on the planet and learn from them. The worst thing you can do is to look at shitty images on Facebook or other websites where like, some of the stuff is good and some is absolute junk. And your brain starts recording these images and starts sort of averaging them down and starting to lower the standards. It's a psychological, it's a psychological thing. So it's like, in countries where there's a regime, right? People just get used to it because it's just there. They've been born there. It's normal. Now the best way to learn is to find top dogs in your field. Then find them on ArtStation or other websites and look who they're following and follow them. And then you'll have a library of really good visual library of where you should be going to, where you should be headed, your direction. Don't look on people who are, lower level. You can help them out, but don't blindly follow what they do. It's very, very possible that, you know, artists that are less skilled can come up with something amazing, so it doesn't mean that you can't learn from them, but don't blindly follow what they do. Always look up to people who are better than you. So if I create something in 3D, right, the moment I finish working on it, or like the next day, I think it's okay, and I need to do better, because I can see flaws in my work. In any work that I created, I can see flaws. And that's how you should approach a work. Yeah, it's depressing, could be, but it depends how you're gonna approach the subject, right? I mean, breathing is depressing too, because you have to do it all the fucking time, but you know, what are you gonna do? You gotta breathe. Now, my top tips for rendering then, right, is flat light. I would start with flat light and just go easy and start learning how light works. And you can start controlling this in Photoshop by, you know, contrasting, etc. Don't use too many lights at once. Start with one. When I start with photographers who want to learn studio photography with flashes, I always start with them with one light. And I tell them, here's your one light and you show me a good portrait, because you can make one light look like many if you know how to use reflections and bouncing. You don't need many lights. See, because many lights introduce another problem of color. Let's say you have an HDRI, right? Let's take this bot, for example. Where was he? If I had this warm light from the left side and I had a colder light, so light with a different Kelvin value on the other side, right, I'll have a clash of colors. But if I use a gray card that actually reflects a white sheet of like a white plane or whatever that reflects the light back, it's gonna reflect the light back, right? So it's gonna be similar color and warmth. So a neutral gray, light gray reflector will reflect light back, or white one as well, right? So that's important. So starting with many lights is not a good idea, because you're going to get confused. It's very difficult to control the lights. Think, what is your main subject in a photo? What is that you really want people to pay attention to, and light it first. And then start lighting other things around it. So backlights, hair lights, whatever, kick lights, is all the same thing basically, but you know, side lights, top lights, whatever lights, right? So that's another thing, lighting. Then composition. Try to make your images balanced. Think about it. Think about if what you're looking at, it actually looks balanced. Don't look at the object. This is the most important thing. Do not look at the fucking object. Look at the whole image. Do not look at the object, look at the whole image. That's the key of good composition. You have to look at the whole thing, not just one. That's why you have those funny portraits on internet with people, they have like sticking shit out of their head, you know, like a pole or a sign or whatever the hell. I saw like a render of a car recently in somewhere in a forum on Facebook. It was a really good model, but it was rendered on a background that has like electrical poles sticking out. And one of them was just going across the car. I mean, it takes 2 fucking seconds to remove it in Photoshop. How lazy can you get? And he actually took time to, you know, like post-process it. He didn't see it. That's the whole point. He did not see that pole because he was just focused on the car. Don't focus on the ass. Focus on the whole thing. Yeah? Because you're gonna get stuck with it for many years. Do you know what I mean? Now, another thing is that, so we got the light with the composition. Balance of shadows and highlights. This is so important, yeah? So if you're gonna have like one side of the picture really dark and one side of the picture really bright and crazy, one side of the picture is gonna become completely irrelevant unless you know how to control it. Let me show you. This is a good example here. So this one, right? Let me show you the original picture. You see that? See these 2 points on both sides, here and here, left and right? They're so distracting, right? It's just a mess. So I came in and I simply photoshopped it because I knew what I want. And now the image, suddenly the attention from these corners pops back to this board. Look the change between the edges of the image and now. You know, I mean, look at the difference between edges of the image before and after. See how the attention is brought back here to this point, to his face, and then it spills around, because that's what I want. I don't want you to look all over the place, right? This one is probably gonna be very mellow, yeah. But you see, again, look at the vignette around. You see, I'm bringing the attention inside the image, because that's what I want you to look. This one is like everything is flat. You can see the lights, but the floor is basically the same, of the same brightness level than the bike. And now look, all these parts are popping up because of local contrasting, dodging and burning. Look up dodging and burning in photography. So balance of bright tones and dark tones in the image. That's another thing that you need to. Colors. Again, you know, don't overload your image with colors, because we're not building a Christmas tree unless you're doing that. But even then, you want to go easy. So the good practice here would be, for example, for sci-fi, if you want to go colors, go with a dominant color and then some other bits, right? Full on gray with some accents of colors. But if you're gonna put yellow, red, whatever, green all over the place, it's gonna look like a fucking Christmas tree. You're gonna lose the control over details, because eyes will get drawn to different patches of colors immediately. They're gonna just jump all over the place. It's gonna be tiring, and people will not like it. Brain will reject the image. It will just reject it flat out. Even if it's a fantastic model, the brain will reject the image, because that's how it works. It's just gonna get overloaded. It's like you're playing a game and your computer cannot handle it, and you get FPS drops. It's the same thing. In order to do a good composite, you need to match few things like colors, perspective, you know, camera angle, and depth, and brightness, contrast. If you miss one of these and it's just, you know, doesn't fit, it's gonna look fake. And again, it's just gonna look silly, like, you know, like you just photoshopped your uncle into an image and it just looks dumb. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the vid. Give us a like and subscribe if you did, and let me know what you think in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next vid. Take care.